Hello and welcome. You're watching NDTV special budget show focusing on taxes, the changes proposed in the budget and what that means for you. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented her 7th budget today, the first of Modi 3.0 government. For the middle class, for the salaried class, there's been some restructuring of income tax rates, but only in the new regime. So what changes for you and me? Let's take a look at this graphics which has tried to break up for our viewers what exactly changes in the new tax regime. Now, as per the changes proposed, now in this regime, someone who is earning between 3 to 7 lakhs will be taxed at 5%. Of course, there's exemption till 3 lakhs. Then for an income of 7 to 10 lakhs, the tax rate is 10%. Income of 10 to 12 lakhs, tax rate is 15%. And any income above that, of course, is, as we know, it goes up to the 30% bracket. Now, the impact of this is that another important point, rather, in fact, to note is that the standard deduction for new tax regime has been raised from 50,000 to 75,000. In fact, there was a lot of expectation it would go up to 1 lakh, but that didn't happen. So the impact, as we were talking about, overall is that income between 9 to 10 lakh, for those who are earning between 9 to 10 lakh, will be taxed at 10% instead of the earlier bracket of 15%. Also, those with salaries, they are likely to save up to 17,500 rupees annually because of these changes which have been proposed in the new tax regime. So how have these changes resonated with the people on ground? We will also be looking at few other taxes which impact the middle class and get expert analysis on those changes. On the show, I'm going to be joined by my colleague Saurabh from Kolkata and Radhika from Mumbai. Also, I have a panel of top experts. Kumaramangalam Vijay, partner and head of practice indirect taxes, JSA Advocates and Solicitors, is joining us. Mr. Rajiv Dimri, co-chair of FICCI Committee on Taxation, will be joining us. Saraswati Kasturi Rangan, partner of Deloitte India, will also be joining us on the show. Charanya Lakshmi Kumaran, executive partner of Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan Attorneys, will also be joining us, as well as Naveen Wadhwa, vice president of the Taxman. But before we go across to my colleagues, the reporters and the guests, let's listen in to the top announcements made by the finance minister with regard to tax.
In the new tax regime, the tax rate structure is proposed to be revised as follows. 0 to 3 lakh rupees, nil. 3 to 7 lakh rupees, 5%. 7 to 10 lakh rupees, 10%. 10 to 12 lakh rupees, 15%. 12 to 15 lakh rupees, 20%. And above 15 lakh rupees, 30%. As a result of these changes, a salaried employee in the new tax regime stands to save up to 17,500 rupees in income tax.
अभी मैं बोल नहीं सकती हूँ. जरूर हमारी इरादा ये है कि सिंपलर टैक्सेशन रजीम होना चाहिए और सिंपल टैक्स रजीम की ओर अगर हम जा रहे हैं ये रिव्यू के द्वारा, वो ही हमारी मकसद होगा कि सिंपल कर दो. ओल्ड टैक्स रजीम को सिंपल करने के रास्ते पर ही ये नया टैक्स रजीम आया है. सनसेट होगा कि नहीं होगा वो अभी मैं बोल नहीं सकती हूँ. वो रिव्यू करने के बाद ही हम एक डिसीजन लेंगे.
Right, as we promised, let's go across to my colleagues Saurabh and Radhika for the voices on ground and how are people reacting to the changes as far as taxes are concerned, which have been announced, proposed by the finance minister today. Coming to you, Saurabh, first. So what are the people with you in Kolkata saying?
Well, Tanima, I'm coming to you from a group of ladies and, of course, Mr. Dhanuka, who's been discussing the budget all day. Millennium Mams was set up, I believe, to increase financial literacy amongst women. So let me start with you, ma'am, your reactions on the budget.
You know, one big takeaway for me is that there's really no trust deficit, and this is what even foreign investors are really looking at. And the key word here is continuity. If you look at anything in the kind of schemes, there is a lot of continuity. And I'll actually quote an example. Look at the way they are actually providing 1 crore families the opportunity to continue to to install solar panels for rooftops, and they've given them subsidy. This is something that has been continued, right? So I think that is something which is going to be looked at very positively.
Renewable energy, ma'am. What about you?
So I think I was very happy to see agriculture, rightly so, was a priority. And the way she's focused on oilseeds mission, that is going to be a game changer for us because, if we become Atmanirbhar in oilseeds, then we don't need to import anymore. And the digital infrastructure she has promised for agriculture, that is a big step as well.
Sir, you've been doing this for years. You sort of look at the budget as a whole. According to you, what stands out?
One big word is fiscal deficit, and here they have promised that it will be 4.9%. The huge success, and next year they are projecting 4.5. Then after that 4%. So all the foreigners or Indian investor, they don't look at short-term capital gain or long-term gain. They look at fiscal deficit. That is the bottom line.
And I think that has had an impact on the markets. But ma'am, what about you?
Yeah. So as you said about the market, I think she did mention about the long-term capital gain. She's increased the taxes from 10% to 12%, and the short-term capital gain has increased from 15% to 20%. But I would like to say that the Indian market has behaved very maturely to these announcements. They did not react they did not give a knee-jerk reaction to this. So Indian stock market has become very matured, and the impact of long-term capital gain tax on the real estate is on the positive side. It has come down from 20% to 12.5%, and also the short-term period has been decreased from 3 years to 2 years. So it is a very good thumbs up for the real estate. Just one point that we have to see tomorrow is the part of indexation. If that is allowed, then it is a big flip side for the real estate.
What about you, ma'am?
For me, this benefit for the salaried class, saving 17,500 rupees per year, it's a big incentive for the salaried class, and it will give more money in the hands of the people, and this will have a multiplier effect. Just the number 17,500 when multiplied by the tax-paying population, it's a huge amount.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Ma'am, what about you?
3 lakh crore allocated for women benefit schemes. We don't know yet all the schemes in detail, but I think this is a very big step to uplift women and also to make hostels for working women. So I really congratulate our FM to really think about women when she is preparing the budget.
And the one question that I have is, playing the devil's advocate, because there is a lot of states have complained that, look, their demands have been ignored. West Bengal, Maharashtra, these are states that have openly spoken out. And what do you feel about that?
Everyone will talk about that they are the allies, so definitely Bihar and Andhra get preference. But it doesn't end there. No? Ultimately, the budget is not end of the day. Continuously they can support Maharashtra and other states also. At least I can talk about Bihar. Bihar needed this badly. And they got this support, no?
All right. Thank you so much, sir. So we've heard a wonderful mix of opinions on the budget, and these ladies and Mr. Dhanuka have been dissecting the budget all day. They've had a session inside and they've shared their views. And well, the budget is something that everyone has a view on, but it's great to hear from you, ma'am and sir. And that's of course what Kolkata thinks of the budget in terms of the issues that we discussed here.
Right, and how it affects you and me and the middle class and the salaried class. Going over to Radhika in Mumbai now. What does Mumbai think about the changes proposed in the budget, especially with regard to tax?
That's right. Finance Minister did announce a slew of measures as far as taxpayers are concerned. Several people feel that there is some sort of relief, but many feel that there needs to be more done as far as, concessions for taxpayers are concerned. Let me go across to residents of Mumbai. As we were discussing before, yes, tax slabs have been tweaked. As far as standard deduction limit is concerned, that has been hiked. But is that enough relief for a salaried employee like me?
I feel the salaried class is the most impacted at any point in time. It's just not income tax, but number of other taxes that they pay as indirect taxes, which really puts a heavy burden. So, the government needs to do more here because all of it is declared income from the employer's perspective. So I would say it's a bit lukewarm as far as salaried class is concerned.
All right, lukewarm as far as salary class is concerned. Now, the old regime is completely untouched, whereas some relief as far as new regime is concerned. So, how do you think this is going to impact people in general? Do you think government is planning to do away with the old regime per se? Take us through your thoughts on these tax relief.
Yeah, see, the government has been telling us that the new regime is simplified. So they are pushing, or all their decisions are in a way that are pushing the people to move towards the new regime. They say it's a simplified version of the old tax regime where you had to prove your deductions and show exemptions that you were claiming, you had to give proofs, etc. So now they are saying move to the new regime. It's very simplified. Up to 15 lakhs they've laid out the tax structures. They've increased the standard deduction from 50 to 75,000. So in effect, the finance minister has said that this will benefit each individual up to 17,500, moving to the new regime in the current structure. So that is what has been told regarding the individuals.
Yeah. And so you were talking about capital gains tax structure, a lot of changes.
On the budget, the expectations were far more. Let's understand the common man is burdened with a lot of things today. A 17,500 relief is not much given today's inflation, given the cost of medical things. Point number one, the expectation was far more from the budget, but the direction is, the government is going in the right direction. But having said that, while they've given a tax benefit, they've taken away the long-term capital gain and indexation benefit from the property. Now, a senior retired person who wants to sell a property and save some money to go and stay far is going to have a problem. So I think it's basically they've given something, they've taken away something more. But the direction is right, the fiscal deficit is being controlled. If they are able to do that and really stick to the figures, I'm sure next year the government should look at doing much more for the common man.
Oh, great. A 30% tax for above 15 lakh, of course, it's uniform. Do you think that perhaps the super rich should be taxed even more, perhaps those earning more than 50 lakh, 1 crore, so that there's some sort of, reduce in burden as far as, a common man?
We should have done something for the rich too. And I also feel that it has been quite a letdown, the budget. We were expecting much more by way of relief in taxes from the finance ministry. This is my opinion.
Okay. Ma'am, you were talking about, women empowerment and the fact that how this perhaps, in terms of taxation and so on, how it will impact women and how it will perhaps help in empowering women. How do you sort of, analyze the budget?
30 crores has been allocated for women basically who want to invest into small businesses in the Mudra Yojana schemes. So they would be able to have their startups and small industries on their own. So that's like a key benefit for them. And also women enrollment in higher education, that has been increased by around 28%. And to add to that, 43% seats have increased for women in STEM. So those are good, key takeaways, as well as in gold. The custom duty on gold has been reduced from 18% to 9%, which means that women can buy more gold and their Sridhan can increase. So that's a good takeaway for women.
All right. So there you heard it from residents of Mumbai. Mixed reaction, certainly. Not everybody is happy as far as salaried employees are concerned. As he was saying, much needs to be done for salaried employees, be it the old regime or the new regime. So certainly optimism there and, a sense of disappointment also being witnessed among residents of Mumbai here, especially because Maharashtra has not been considered as far as this entire allocation is concerned. That is also a reaction that we got throughout the day. Right. But these are the views from people in Mumbai as far as, tax, announcements. Income tax announcements
in the budget is concerned. Radhika there and Saurabh, thank you so much for joining us with very articulate voices and opinions from the ground there. Now we'll go into the portion where we talk to our experts about how they analyze the budget, especially with regard to taxes that we are focusing on this show. I want to start with Kumaramangalam Vijay first. Mr. Vijay, there had been a lot of expectations from the government, especially as far as tax structure or tax regime rejig is concerned. Finally, it's happened, yes, that we can say. But is this sufficient measure that people were expecting from the Modi 3.0 government?
Okay, so if I have to take few major takeaways, I will say that the first one is abolition of angel tax. And see, this has a single biggest impact on the employment generation, because today we have moved from being just an employee-oriented country to an employer-oriented country. Everyone wants to do a startup. They want to go ahead and set up their own businesses. Now, if the capital itself is taxed, it's a very detrimental, thing for anyone, whether the investor or the investee entity. So I think that's a very big thumbs up over here on that.
Right, Mr. Vijay, I'm really sorry to interrupt you there, but Finance Minister's interviews happening right now in Doordarshan.
अगर आप इन्वेस्ट भी किए तो अब का इंडस्ट्री का रिक्वायरमेंट अलग हो गया है, इसलिए उन आईटीआईज में ये इक्विपमेंट इंडस्ट्री 4.0 को जो चाहिए इक्विपमेंट वो सब खरीद कर हम रखेंगे और इसमें प्राइवेट सेक्टर का साथ ले रहे हैं। वो हमारे साथ और राज्य सरकार के साथ काम करके 10th पास करके छोड़कर बाहर आने वाले लड़कियों को आईटीआई के द्वारा जहां ट्रेनिंग मिलना है, स्किलिंग होना है, जिसके बाद उनको कुछ डिप्लोमा वगैरह मिलता है, उसमें भी हम पैसा डाल करके युवाओं को अच्छा ट्रेनर्स को सैलरी दे करके उधर ट्रेनिंग का। सो फर्स्ट टाइम एम्प्लॉय, सेकेंड टाइम एम्प्लॉय, सेकेंड और थर्ड टाइम एम्प्लॉय, फ्रेश 10th स्टैंडर्ड स्किलिंग और फाइनली इंटर्नशिप के विषय में मैं गर्व से कहना चाह रही हूँ 1 करोड़ युवा डायरेक्टली उस इंटर्नशिप से बेनिफिट करेंगे, क्योंकि टॉप 500 कंपनीज के साथ भारत सरकार बात करेगी और उनके सीएसआर के द्वारा वो इसमें जोड़ सकते हैं कि अच्छा ट्रेनर्स भी रखें उनके कंपनी के द्वारा और कंपनी शॉप फ्लोर में इन लोगों को एक्सपोजर दे, हैंड्स ऑन लर्निंग का इंटर्नशिप दें, 1 साल पूरे इंटर्नशिप दें और उसके बाद अगर ये बाहर आएंगे उनके सीवी में टॉप 500 कंपनी के एक कंपनी इनको इंटर्नशिप दिया तो इनका वैल्यू बढ़ेगी, जॉब में रेडीनेस बढ़ेगी एम्प्लॉयर को इनको रहने। ऐसे करके 5 स्कीम्स जिसके द्वारा युवाओं को एकदम उनके हर स्तर के लिए ट्रेनिंग का मॉड्यूल बना करके हम आगे आए हैं। ये प्रधानमंत्री जी का हर एक स्कीम के ऊपर ध्यान दिला करके टेलर मेड स्कीम्स तैयार हुआ है।
Madam Finance Minister, you've given a provision for 1.52 lakh crore rupees for the agriculture sector and 2.66 lakh crore rupees for rural development, including rural infrastructure. So effectively, how does this meet the goal of what the economic survey was looking at as making agriculture an engine for growth?
See, one thing I want to dispel. When we say these kind of amounts, people don't realize these are other than what is running as schemes. Manrega, nobody mentioned in the budget. Madam Finance Minister has not mentioned Manrega. It doesn't mean that I'm going to stop Manrega to run this. They are on-demand programs which keep going, for which I've made provision. I have not mentioned it in the speech, but it is in my records. It's in the budget revenue expenditure ka statement jahan hai, you get that there. So this misconceived notion that if it doesn't appear in the speech, it's not at all there is wrong. I want to make that plain.
Right.
Now when you have rightly quoted the amounts for agriculture, we are saying what is very important is to reach to the farmers such inputs which are worthy for them to toil in the soil. So it's one thing you give MSPs, it's one thing you give Kisan Samman Nidhi, all that will go on.
Right.
But Kisan today requires high quality seeds, better inputs, and for that good research with which we can. I made one announcement also in this budget, 109 varieties of seeds, both for field crops and also for horticulture.
And also the climate resilient.
For climate resilient seeds. Most of our farmers today buy seeds which can't take this extreme heat, sudden flooding, and then also sometimes scarcity of irrigatable waters and so on. So I'm very proud that Indian agriculture scientists of themselves come up with this 109 resilient varieties. which I'm sure will soon be launched, and they will be, we'll be taking it down to the farmer so that they can benefit.
All
So
developed
that's
in
one.
India, ma'am?
All developed in India.
Okay.
And even better is we are looking at giving input support also to the farmers. As I said, more than 50% of his input cost should be met by the amounts that we give them. So these are great detail. And rural development is looking at not just PM Gram Sadak Yojana, not just building homes, PM Awas Yojana, where big amounts are going, that is important. 3 crore new homes, 25,000 new Gram Panchayats will get road network. Over and above this, we are looking at actually hard infrastructure in the rural areas, whether you're having silos for storage of grains, whether you've got power, actually 3-phase power going there with smart meters, and making sure that 5G connectivity reaches them. Because today, e-commerce for agriculture, for MSME, for meeting the global markets is a requirement in the villages.
And this special vegetable clusters, ma'am, also it may help this, fighting the food inflation.
Yes, because the supply side management of perishable crops is a very big challenge for any government. Right. We have a group of ministers which looks at the situation every 15 days and imports from some countries, from Nepal, from somewhere else, and redistributes. But if we are able to manage a perishable crops in its production, storage and redistribution better, we'll be able to control prices. You're right in pointing that out.
वित्त मंत्री जी, प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने फर्स्ट रिएक्शन जो डीडी नेटवर्क पर दिया उसमें आपको बधाई दी, आपकी टीम को बधाई दी, साथ ही उन्होंने कहा कि ये बेटर ग्रोथ और ब्राइट फ्यूचर के लिए दिया गया बजट है। अब जब आपने एक रोड मैप इंटरिम बजट में आपने प्रॉमिस किया था कि हम विकसित भारत का रोड मैप देंगे, आपने इस पूर्ण बजट में दिया। ये जो 9 पिलर्स आपने डिफाइन किए हैं, आपको लगता है कि ये एक विकसित भारत की नींव रखते हैं, और किस तरह से इसके पीछे का दर्शन थोड़ा सा समझाएंगे हमारे दर्शकों को प्लीज?
बिल्कुल, ये 9 पर्टिकुलर आइटम्स स्पेसिफिकली हमने बोला है। आप अगर अब देखेंगे यूजुअल क्लेम्स ऑफ हाउसेस, रोड्स, ये नहीं है। इन एवरी वन ऑफ देम एक फ्यूचरिस्टिक ध्यान दिया गया। फर्स्ट पॉइंट ऑन एग्रीकल्चर प्रोडक्टिविटी रिलेटेड, क्योंकि वोट ऑन अकाउंट बजट में हमने एग्रीकल्चर रिसर्च के लिए भी और अभी भी एग्रीकल्चर रिसर्च के लिए बहुत बड़ा फंड अनाउंस करी, और उसके द्वारा मॉडर्नाइज करने के लिए एग्रीकल्चर में क्रॉप पैटर्न के लिए, और ये 400 गांव में जाकर के खरीफ क्रॉप का, लैंड असेसमेंट का और फार्मर्स रजिस्ट्री में एंटर करने के लिए
डीपीआई का इस्तेमाल, जो
डीपीआई का इस्तेमाल, ये सब फ्यूचरिस्टिक फॉर मॉडर्नाइजिंग इंडियाज एग्रीकल्चर, वो एक पॉइंट है। फिर सोशल जस्टिस के साथ प्रधानमंत्री उन्नत ट्राइबल विलेज, इसमें 63,000 villages in which there are tribal bahul tribal majority villages. We are going to absolutely provide everything to make them compare with any other better managed ग्राम पंचायत।
5 करोड़ जनजाति,
हाँ, 5 करोड़ जनजाति को। सो सोशल जस्टिस मतलब ये सिर्फ नहीं है कि आप अच्छे कहीं स्कूल चलाओ और जिसमें वंचित वर्गों का बच्चे को ले आओ, वो भी करना, ये भी करना।
मैम, वर्किंग वुमेन्स हॉस्टल, creches, women specific skilling programs, promotion of market access for self-help groups, these are some of the things you mentioned, and you said that women's led development will see an allocation of more than 3 lakh crore rupees. Could you specify some of the, how this is going to be spent?
See, actually speaking, we have been consistently maintaining that the emphasis for bringing more women to productive activities will have to be continued. And that is why in economic survey yesterday, you saw the figures that from somewhere close to 2018, 16.7% to 37, women's participation in workforce has been highlighted in the economic survey. So in the last 10 years, where we started with a simple Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao to bringing more women and incentivizing women in work, and providing them, loans to uplift them. Even in this budget, we have given emphasis for land and property registration for women. So like that, at every stage when we center focus on women, it has brought in a bit of a mindset change, like the way in which in the rural areas, Drone Didi has actually not just made women to be able to operate drones, but the mindset in the village that our women can just not do a regular kitchen work, but here are they in the fields which are essentially male dominated. Only for the haranguing, monotonous physical labor de-weeding the field do you find women coming. But here in the villages, women are operating drone. They are able to make assessment of the crop density. They are able to use it for spraying fertilizer, chemical and so on. And if this is how villages and their mindsets are changing towards women, it gives them a prominence. So in many of that is why, if you remember last time, we had come up with a special savings scheme, Mahila Samman Bachat Nidhi. What a response we had in it. Because people realize saving in the name of women actually helps. They've come out to invest. Women have themselves come out, and women themselves are saving in some other, their child or their mother's names. Right. So this government has not lost an opportunity in bringing to focus women and women's needs. Whether it is the simple sanitary pad, which Honorable PM spoke about, even from Red Fort, you can see the priority is given for women, and that's what has explained why 3 lakh crores for women and women-led. Today Anganwadis are standing out for the kind of quality work that they're doing. They can be even better improved. You're going to have early childhood education centers in those Anganwadis, because
Welcome back. Continuing with our focus on the changes proposed in the budget as far as tax structures are concerned. And continuing with the discussion, in fact, let me go across to Mr. Rajiv Dimri now, co-chair of the FICCI Committee on Taxation. Mr. Dimri, there was, we had in fact discussed the pre-budget memo which had been given by FICCI, especially with regard to the tax proposal. So is the FICCI in a way satisfied with what the Finance Minister presented today in terms of the changes she proposed on taxes?
As you would have seen yourself, the list of demands is endless because we have to cater to all the members. And therefore, I can't ever imagine a scenario where all our demands are met, for sure. But I think the focus on MSME, the focus on manufacturing and employment generation, those are some of the key demands that the FICCI has been highlighting, not just in this year, but multiple years. Because, the core aspect of MSME is that not only we need all the big companies, yes, of course, but if you look at the larger economies, if you look at Germany, if you look at US, the medium and small enterprises plays a material role in economic activity, in value addition, in innovation, and of course in local employment. And these MSME also has the ability to have a more widespread development and not just concentrated to some large industrial areas.
Right, but what's your point of view as far as the taxation structure is concerned, Mr. Dimri? Because we are focusing specifically on that in this show.
So, when it comes to taxation, yes, if there could have been little bit more incentives for the larger players, that's something. But if we look at the removal of the equalization levy, which has been a demand for a number of years, and that was a great thing. The rationalization of TDS provisions, because even small, small defaults were resulting in major nuisance. So we certainly welcome some of the rationalization measures. But is there anything big for the big manufacturing? For instance, no PLI is a miss as far as we are concerned in this budget. So while PLI has been a materially successful, schemes, not having a PLI in this budget is definitely a miss. So there are good and bad in this budget for the taxpayers.
Right. Saraswati Kasturi Rangan, coming to you now. One of the aspects that we're looking at is besides the income tax slabs, is the capital gains tax as well. While there was a demand for rationalizing it, and that's what the finance minister has done this time around, there's also been an increase in capital gains tax, both in short term as well as long term. So what is your takeaway as far as that is concerned?
Well, I guess overall it is a matter of deliberating whether consistency and clarity is better over a long-term period. And I think the sense we are getting is that this government is definitely looking at long-term changes. So from that perspective, I would say while there is a small tweak from 10% for listed securities to 12.5%, the exemption limit also has been increased from 1 lakh to 1,25,000. So yes, there is an initial feeling that yes, the rates are higher, but if it is consistent and there for long term, I would definitely say 12.5 is not too bad. From a short-term capital gain perspective, especially on the listed securities, yes, 15 to 20 is not easy to digest, and I think there was a knee-jerk reaction from the markets on that. That is something that we would definitely need to look at. The other thing we would also need to keep in mind is on immovable properties, we are seeing that the rate is now long-term is at 12.5% without indexation. So that's something which we would need to look at. Does it really work? Because indexation was something that was considered very favorable from an immovable property perspective. So we would need to look at that a little more in detail. But I think overall, we would need to look at whether, given all the fine balancing that needs to be done, I think this is something that's commendable.
Right. Naveen Wadhwa, if I can bring you in on this. Now, coming back to the income tax structure, the changes were obviously very pointedly made only to the new income tax regime. But will this finally lead to more takers? Because we haven't really seen that happening much over the past couple of years. So what's your thought on that?
So I still do not believe that many taxpayers will go with the new tax regime. So I did some little calculations, and what I found, if your total income is about 20 lakh rupees and you are claiming just a handful of deductions like ATC, ATD, 24B, and still old tax regime is beneficial for you, your tax liability would be lesser in the old tax regime. And as of now, till date for this current assessment year, around 80% of the taxpayers are still in the old tax regime. So I believe this number should be reduced a bit, and but I still believe that if your income is about 20 lakh rupees, the old tax regime is beneficial for you. And if let's talk about the capital gain taxation, yes, there has been a buzz. The removal of the indexation benefit is very, very disadvantageous for the taxpayers. But if this is not the exact case, if your property is too old, if you bought your property, let's say in 2001, and there has been substantial increase in the price of your property. So your property is in tier 1 city, let's say Gurgaon and Noida. So the tax liability would be lesser if after this removal of the indexation benefit and reduction in the tax rate. So I won't say it's not completely black or white. I still say it's a gray, and you have to see case to case basis if this budget actually has given you something or it has taken something out of your pocket.
Right. In fact, if I can take the same question and with a bit of a twist to Kumaramangalam Vijay. Mr. Vijay, do you also feel that even now there'll be less takers for the new tax regime? Really, this is not going to work out. And do you feel that the government with this is in any which way a step closer to actually phasing out the old tax regime? Do you see that actually happening? Because we also heard voices from the ground there saying that they are not impressed.
Yeah, so I would agree with what Naveen is saying, that for the high tax brackets, the old tax regime still works well. But at the same time, you see, at some stage we'll have moved towards a more digitized compliance process, where probably most of these deductions, which are based on certain expenses being claimed and all that, they'll have to give way. So I think we're moving towards that direction. And it's only a matter of time before, the old one will probably be completely phased out. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if, do you feel also, if I can take this question to Charanya Lakshmi Kumaran, if we look at some other aspects on how middle class could be affected or the salary class could be affected, and those are in terms of the customs duty cuts. If I can have that graphics up, which will show that there's of course been Duty cuts in gold and silver, that's been brought down from 15 to 6%. Telecom equipment also, there's in fact been a hike from 10 to 15%. And cancer drugs, 3 more medicines have been exempted. And in the medical X-ray equipment, customs duty has in fact been reduced. So do you think that these measures today will actually boost these sectors? They are supposed to be people-friendly measures, but how does it translate it in terms of consumption patterns?
Right. So, great question. I think I would like to look at it in 2 ways, right? One is, you said middle class, right? So that is your consumer class. The other is your middle class, which is also your salaried employee, right? So there are 2 aspects of a middle class that one needs to look at when we look at the budget. Now, the middle class with respect to consumer, yes, things like reduction in the rate of BCD for precious metals is going to definitely impact, and I think I'm very, very thrilled about it, personally speaking. Things like mobile phones, BCD on mobile phone, BCBA equipments, chargers, that has come down. If you look at, you said medicines, for example, 3 critical cancer drugs, that's come down. So when it comes, these are things that will be directly beneficial for a consumer. But if I look at customs duties on, say, steel, electronics, critical minerals, marine, shrimp feed, etc., these are all things that are going to give boost to manufacturing, specific sectors to improve and increase the manufacturing, to increase exports. And when we talk about manufacturing, and this has been a recurrent theme, I think from 2017 onwards, that we have to now push towards the next phase of manufacturing. Manufacturing is going to create jobs. Jobs means, again, this is something that's going to go back to the lower middle class and the middle class all over again. So I think this is a great boost to the manufacturing sector.
Okay, yes, and jobs and the internship program, which has also been suggested in the budget, that's also something which has, of course, at least led to a lot of reactions, if nothing else. If I can quickly now ask all of you to come up to present your assessment of the budget, especially with regard to taxes that we have been focusing on, starting with Kumaramangalam. Vijay, first with you, I want to actually get an opinion from everyone here on the same question. Modi 3.0 government's first budget, how does it fare when it comes to the burden that the salaried class or the middle class have to take in terms of the tax share? How does this budget fare as far as that scale is concerned? Kumaramangalam, Vijay, first with you.
Well, middle classes have been taking the burden of contributing a lot to the revenue, and to that extent, the relief will always be, they'll feel that it's falling short. But I think it's a great step because they've retained at least 12.5% tax on the capital gains on long term. At the same time, on the properties, they've reduced the tax rates, and the angel tax has gone away. I think overall, I think it's a very, very positive budget, and it will lay steps towards a lot more inclusive growth going forward.
Right. I have 30 seconds for each guest to comment on this. Naveen Wadhwa, you go next.
As far as the income tax proposals are concerned, so I believe the government has tried to bring certainty in the tax laws. They have tried to simplify the provision, and they have given a lot of things for the taxpayer, except if we leave tax on the capital gain from the financial securities. I believe there are a lot of things for the taxpayer, and it will really help them in getting the certainty in the taxation laws. So I'll say the taxpayer have something to cheer up for this budget.
Okay, Rajiv Dimri, your closing thoughts?
What is given to the individual taxpayers is good, not great. Of course, 17.5 is good, but it's not what will make them absolutely delightful. The focus on creating employment for young people is a great step forward. What is also perhaps not talked about, the steps that have been taken to reduce dispute, which is one big problem that our tax system has. I think that will also go a long way in making this a more beneficial for the larger economy.
Right. The finance minister has also, in fact, called for a complete review of the IT Act to try and simplify it for everybody. Saraswati Kasturi Rangan, your final thoughts on this?
So I think we've all been talking about the tax slabs and the capital gains, but I think there's a little more in the detail for the salaried class. For instance, that there was this tax collected at source, which was typically not availed or not given as to be considered in your salary deduction. Now that has been enabled. So I think those with overseas remittances, stock payments, purchase of gold, they would now be able to use all those credits at the time of tax withholding itself. The other thing is for MNCs, employees where they give overseas shares, there was a big challenge reporting all of that in the tax return and they had to file ITR2. Now there is an exemption from reporting up to 20 lakhs. So I think procedurally there is a lot that is there to cheer for. Overall, I think it's a step in the right direction, bringing clarity and consistency. Certainly a long-term bet, I would say.
And finally, Charanya Lakshmi Kumaran.
Thank you. So yes, I think it's a positive budget. Does it mean immediately a lot of money in the pockets of the middle class? Maybe not. But I don't think we should look at a budget every year anymore as a tax saving per se, but as a roadmap for the next few years. And I think two key things: rationalization of tax rates, simplification of the act, simplification of the procedure, and dispute resolution. I think these are key takeaways which will help the middle class and every taxpayer in the future.
Right, and with that, we are coming to an end to this show where we specifically looked at the budget and the proposals that the finance minister presented as far as taxation structure is concerned, and the several aspects that we covered here. Thank you so much to all my guests for joining me on this discussion. And with that, of course, it's a wrap from my side. News and updates will continue right here on NDTV. I'm also, in order to discuss the budget presentation today, I'm also joined by Dr. Soumya Kanti Ghosh, Chief Economic Advisor of the SBI and also a member of the 16th Finance Commission. Mr. Ghosh, thank you so much for joining us here on NDTV. Your initial assessment of the budget presented by the Finance Minister today.
Yeah, I think, thank you for having me on the show. I think it's a good budget. It's a budget actually which ensures stability and continuity in the tax proposals. There has been some tweaks in the budget, but the good thing is that the numbers which are put out in the budget, as like in the previous years, they are conservative. And my sense is that at the end of the year, you will see that the deficit numbers and the borrowing numbers which have been put out will be much better than this, given the existing tax buoyancy. So basically the budget again, it has been a case for the last couple of years. The budget actually over delivers and under promises. And I think this is a continuity from the last 2 years when the deficit was pegged at higher level and we reached a lower target. So from that point of view, it is good for the markets, it is good for stability and good for continuity.
Mr. Ghosh, how does this budget fare when it comes to assessing on the basis of ease of doing business? Is there enough measure which has been proposed by the finance minister to enhance ease of doing business?
I think on the first case, if you ask me about the ease of doing business, I think the government has reduced the taxes on foreign companies from 40 to 35%. So that's a positive step. The second thing which it has done is that it is actually this time announced several schemes which basically talks about this employability. As you know that the government is going to incentivize the people who are going to enter the workforce. So that is also another thing in terms of the employability. And if you ask me about the ease of doing business, I think it has actually identified critical sectors which are employment generators. For example, in MSME sectors, there are several initiatives. A credit guarantee scheme is coming, which will literally benefit a lot of SME players. The agricultural sector, the land records are going to be digitized. And if this is an indication, I think over a point of time, given the fact that a lot of records are digitized, it will also help the farmers to hypothecate their land and get higher loan. And also, I think in some of the other sectors like taxation, like the skilling, the government has intended abolishing the angel tax. So that is also another way of looking into the ease of doing business. So I think there are several micro initiatives in the budget which tries to ease of doing business, but I want to emphasize that this is a continuity and you could actually see more changes coming in the February budget because the finance minister today said that she wants to simplify the IT tax. And my hunch is that over a point of time, the changes which we have seen in the capital gains and other things will mean that we are actually moving to a new tax regime.
Okay. Mr. Ghosh, quickly, because you mentioned it, that, this internship program which has been suggested by the government, there are a lot of questions being raised about it. Politics apart, do you think it's workable? And does it really truly answer, is that a fitting answer to the jobs challenge that we are facing?
See, I think if you ask me very honestly, I think in Indian labor market, if you look into for the record of the last 50 years, every time if you look into the data, 50% or more of the Indian labor market is actually self-employed. So basically the criticism which often comes in the last couple of years that the self-employment has gone up is actually not correct, because always it's a matter of fact that 50% of more India's employees are self-employed. Having said that, the idea about the schemes is that trying to ensure that the labor force is actually getting formalized. And from that point of view, we will also find another mention in the budget, where the budget has clearly said that the data on the eShram portal, whereby all the unorganized laborers have actually registered, that will be integrated with the other portals. So this means that the government is working on two steps. First, formalizing the Indian labor force, because the informal labor component in the Indian market varies from 40 to 45% through several estimates. So that is the first aim of the government, to reduce the informality. And the second thing is that the existing informality also, the government was actually trying to address their issues by trying to see how it can extend social security benefits to them. So my sense is that it's a working process. You may not see immediate results, but over a point of time, I think this could actually address some of the structural issues of the labor market.
Right. Mr. Ghosh, my final question to you. There was a lot of anticipation that there would be something, some announcements made to boost the demand in rural economy. Was that a miss in this budget, according to you?
I don't think it's a miss. I think the government has clearly said that it wants to work on digitizing the land records, and it will actually help the 6 crore farmers. My sense is that in the February budget, we could actually see some definitive moves in that direction in terms of easing of the agricultural credit by using the land records. So I think, and the next budget I think is only a couple of months away in February. So a lot of things which has been said in this budget or not repeated in the budget, I think this is going to happen in the February budget when it will be presented.
Right. My final question, and we have very less time, but your thoughts on whether you see the old tax regime being phased out in the next budget?
Yes, I think the old tax regime has outlived its continuity, but I would like to add one point over here. I think in any country, the personal income tax would ideally convert to the corporate income taxes, or it could be lower than that. So my sense is that given the fact that corporate income tax is currently at 25%, over a point of time, if the old tax regime is continued, I think the new tax regime, the income taxes could ideally convert to the corporate taxes, and that could actually give a huge boost to the consumption, which you always talk about in the context of India, where 60% of the GDP data is actually accounted by consumption. So I think that is one wish which as every taxpayer dreams of, but my sense is that ideally they should converge towards each other over a longer period of time.
All right, Mr. Soumyakanti Ghosh there, thank you so much for joining us on the show with your analysis of the budget presented earlier today. And with that, it's a wrap on the bulletin. Keep watching NDTV for more news and updates.